All right, hey everybody, welcome to this week's book club with the Readable Podcast. My name is Eddie Hood, and we are discussing Being Mortal by Dr. Atul Gawande. We're doing pages 70 to 144 this week. I love this book. I absolutely love this book for so many reasons. I'm looking forward to our discussion tonight. Before we do, a couple housekeeping items. First of all, I'm in a new place. I don't know if you can tell from the background, but I've spent the past 31 days turning my son's bedroom into my new home office slash library. So I will take you on a short, quick tour just because why not? That's fun. Let me do that. So here we are. This is the background. That's one of my favorite pictures by my favorite author, painter, Raphael. It's called The School of Athens. It's got a bunch of famous philosophers in there, including Plato and Aristotle. And then these are the bookcases that I built, and we lit all of them. And it's just, whoop, let me go to this. So it's really cool, right? Like it just goes all the way around me. So much fun. Yeah, it took forever. I have a wood shop and I love woodworking. I don't know if you ever watched the show, The New Yankee Workshop. Has anybody ever seen that? Yes, that was my favorite show growing up, and I still love that show. Have a rolling ladder, which is kind of fun. And then that bookcase right there is a secret bookcase, which opens into a secret room. So I'll show you really quickly. I filmed this whole thing on YouTube, the build, and now we're editing it. But this book right here, The Count of Monte Cristo, opens a secret door like that. And yeah, kind of fun. Super nerdy, but it's just cool. So anyway, my internet here at the house sucks. Uh, and so if I lag at all, please forgive me. I'm in an HOA and they control the internet here. It's horrible. And so I'm currently fighting with my HOA to improve the speed. So please let me know if I lag on you tonight. Anyway, okay. The notes have been posted. And oh, one final thing for all of you who have been so kind as to help me with potentially purchasing a building through the Kickstarter, just an update. None of this was paid with that money. That money is still sitting in trust to potentially buy a building or put it into this community for a better bookkeeping experience. Like I just had a $3,000 bill today for this software which shows up that allows us to meet that bill shows up every year. So it's helping cover costs like that. This was not paid for by any of that money. So hopefully you all will benefit from the support you gave me there. And I just want to thank you for being here tonight. Okay, let's jump in and get going. So the first note I have is page 90. Lots of discussion tonight on sort of the philosophy of um, meaning as it pertains to life. Does meaning come from being safe and secure, or does it come from having purpose and autonomy and so on? It's a fine balance. But we're starting on page 90 today with a little bit of a story. I liked this passage. It leads into what we're doing here. This is the first sort of departure from what we were dealing with, which was just traditional nursing homes, which were very institutionalized, somewhat penitentiary, right? So in the middle of 90, starts with by the time it opened, we're talking about, I think her name was Karen Wilson, and her attempt to build a better solution to the nursing home that she was faced with. By the time it opened, Park Place had become far more than an academic pilot project. It was a major real estate development with 112 units, and they filled up almost immediately. The concept was as appealing as it was radical. Although some of the residents had profound disabilities, none were called patients. They were all simply tenants and were treated as such. They had private apartments with a full bath, kitchen, and a front door that locked, a touch many found particularly hard to imagine. They were allowed to have pets and to choose their own carpeting and furniture. They were given control over temperature settings, food, who came into their home, and when. They were just people living in an apartment. Wilson insisted over and over again. But as elders with advanced disabilities, they were also provided with the sorts of help that my grandfather found so readily with his family all around. Remember his previous story from last week, his grandpa died in a different culture with everybody living under the same home. And so he was able to get the kind of autonomy and care needed to live his own life. He didn't need medical support. There was just so much help in the home. Uh, there was help with the basics, food, personal care, medications. There was a nurse on site, and tenants had a button for summoning urgent assistance at any time of day or night. There was also help with maintaining a decent quality of life, having company, keeping up their connections in the outside world, continuing the activities they valued most. The services were in most ways identical to the services that nursing homes provide, but here the care providers understood they were entering someone else's home, and that changed the power relations fundamentally. The residents had control over the schedule, the ground rules, the risks they did and did not want to take. If they wanted to stay up all night and sleep all day, if they wanted to have a gentleman or lady friend stay over, if they wanted not to take certain medications that made them feel groggy, if they wanted to eat pizza and M&Ms despite swallowing problems and no teeth and a doctor who'd said they should eat only pureed glop, well, they could. And if their mind had faded to the point that they could no longer make rational decisions, then their family, or whomever they designated, could help negotiate the terms of the risks and choices that were acceptable. It was a long passage. All that to be said, that someone was trying to re-engineer um, the standard, the way things are, the normal, right? And create a new normal. And to do it, I feel like the most important line in that passage is that the power dynamics had changed, right? The power had been given back to the person as an individual rather than the medical establishment treating them as providers. Um, I love the medical establishment. My family works in the medical establishment. We have many medical people here. So I love that we're looking at both sides of it. And both sides need to be addressed, right? Like we need good safety and medication. We need autonomy and what have you. But I want to open up the conversation to this passage first. What do you think about Wendy's idea about the power dynamics, about allowing patients to determine their own risks? Is this a good idea? Is this a bad idea? What do you think? There are no right or wrong comments, by the way. Just thoughts. Edie, go ahead.
I love the whole idea, especially how it pertains to ensuring a quality of life and having value and something to look forward to more than just breakfast or watching television all day. But I kept going back to the idea of control. When you're older, you get this feeling of you're invisible. People don't pay as much attention to you. And when you're older and when you become frail, and especially if you're a solo ager, you don't have anyone in your court to advocate for you who has more power and more control. And I do wonder about other people who don't have someone like this who is setting up a whole community like this who doesn't have the power, who doesn't have the control to seek out and get things like this done for themselves. Otherwise, they're going to have to go with what um, is emphasized, safety and regulations, and do what's most convenient for the institution and staff. But I kept thinking about control and power as you get older. A lot of times, especially if you're a solo ager, you lose power and control.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Kathy, go ahead.
Yeah, going along with what Edie said, I think, when people are put into these institutions, um, you kind of lose power. The individual loses power, not necessarily because the staff is trying to pull that power away from them, but it also has to do with like regulations, government regulations and laws. The facilities have to follow regulations and laws. They get dinged every time a person falls or, their diet's not right. So a lot of institutions have to face that. So it's like a balance, I think. But when you're talking about people that get older, well into their elderly years, they kind of deserve the right to make their own choices, I think. Um, for the most part, some people are confused and stuff, but you make things as happy for them as you can. But I think people deserve the right to make their choices. And sometimes regulations get in the way of that. That's my thought.
Yeah, yeah, comments because she sees people like at end of stage who want to make specific choices but can't because of regulations. She works obviously as a nurse, and that's really frustrating for her. That autonomy is that decision power is taken away because of the state's rulings or legislature or whatever it is, people who aren't fully informed. Mr. Garland, go ahead.
Okay, I found it curious last week that we never mentioned the death of Ivan Ilyich. I
Yeah.
understand that
We're going
not
to
necessarily.
tonight.
All right, then
Yeah.
I won't proceed, but it does address what we're talking about here in many ways.
It does. It's a great book. Yeah, definitely one of our notes will be to go over the death of
Okay.
John Hillage. Yeah, thank you for that. Evelyn, go ahead.
Yeah, I think I really enjoyed hearing her drive and her
Hmm.
commitment and all the things she had to go through to try to make this happen. Because in the big scheme, she's like starting the evolution of changing how we perceived elderly people and that end of life time and how to take care of them. So I just am love this part of the book of just the whole story behind how we got to where we are today. And we're better
Hmm.
than we ever are, but we still have a long way to go.
Yeah,
But I just wanted to comment that I really loved hearing the story and how hard they had to work and all the different creative ideas they came up. But I definitely feel that an individual should have the right to take the risks if it means that they have a quality of life. To
yeah,
just be safe isn't, and you lose your whole reason and all the things that matter to you, that's not living.
yeah, yeah, for sure. Great. Okay, let's go to page 92. Again, if you're new here, the notes that I put out are not gospel. If you have your own notes or thoughts or comments, share them at any time. Just raise your hand and I'll put you in the queue. If you're new, the best way to do that is to click the share button. That'll give you the option to then click, not share, react, the react button. Then you can raise your hand. Okay, 92 at the bottom references Abraham Maslow's, of course, the hierarchy of needs, which we all probably have referenced once or twice in our life, professionally or personally, because it's a very simple diagram to explain, and it's one that seems profoundly right. He brings it up here as perhaps it's right, perhaps it's not so applicable. At the bottom of 92, at the center of Wilson's work was an attempt to solve a deceptively simple puzzle. What makes life worth living when we are old and frail and unable to care for ourselves? In 1943, psychologist Abraham Maslow published his hugely influential paper, A Theory of Human Motivation, which famously described people as having a hierarchy of needs. It is often depicted as a pyramid. At the bottom are our basic needs, the essentials of physiological survival, such as food, water, and air, and safety, such as law, order, and stability. Up one level are the needs for love and for belonging. Above that is our desire for growth, the opportunity to attain personal goals, to master knowledge and skills, and to be recognized and rewarded for our achievements. Finally, the top is the desire for what Maslow termed self-actualization, self-fulfillment through pursuit of moral ideals and creativity for their own sake. And then the next paragraph suggests that Maslow argued that safety and survival remain our primary and foundational goals in life, not least when our options and capacities become limited. If that's true, the fact that public policy and concern about old age homes focus on health and safety is just a recognition and manifestation of those goals. They are assumed to be everyone's first priorities. So there's the most important passage there. They are assumed to be everyone's first priorities. All right. So, I mean, we're dealing with a real problem of resources and need for those resources, right? People are aging, and there really is only so many dollars to support that need, so many locations to support that need, and so on. So, um, organizational theory kicks in and says, how do we best meet the need? You know, how do we take care of all of these people efficiently? Um, and we default to the thing we assume everyone needs, which is just safety and kind of getting through the day. Any thoughts here about Maslow's hierarchy of needs or the assumption that safety is what matters most to everybody? Cindy, go ahead.
think I mentioned last time my mom is in a memory care facility,
Mm.
um, and it's alarming. There's not enough people, as you said. The resources are scarce, and I did a quick look on the aging population in the United States, and in 2022 there were 58 million um, Americans age 65 and older. Um, and by 2050, there'll be 82 million, a 42% increase. Um, we got to figure this out. I don't know what the answer is, but the population is aging, and the younger people to take care of them is declining, and the people who want to work in the industry is declining, or not. It's not a valued job. So I don't know what the answer is, but if there's one thing this book is doing, it's making me want to do something to make a difference in this space.
That's good. Yeah, that's excellent. Any other thoughts? Nicole, welcome. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yeah, thanks. Hi, everybody. Regarding this passage, I'm not sure that Maslow's pyramid really applies when you're 95. That's kind of what I was thinking about. I'm not sure that those foundational basic needs would be the same, very late in life as they would in the prime of your life or when you're younger. So I really appreciated throughout this section kind of the discussion of, safety and survival versus self-fulfillment, or, kind of more autonomy and what people really value. And I'm sure that varies quite a bit. I've known very elderly people who probably their biggest fear was not being safe, and that, like, they really wanted to be somewhere where people were watching them all the time and trying to remove all the obstacles that might cause them to fall, or all those types of things. But I feel like, at least among the folks that I know, that's kind of the exception and not the rule. Most people, don't want safety to be the prevailing, thing that is driving all the decisions around their situation in life. So anyway, that's just my thought. I'm not sure that traditional pyramid kind of thing applies late, very late in life.
Mm. I hadn't thought about that. Our next one's going to talk about how our perceived needs emotionally will change as we get older. But I hadn't thought about how the pyramid might change. That's interesting. Edie, go ahead.
That's a really good point, Nicole. Just this past week, I read an article in the AARP magazine about long-term healthcare insurance. The cost of it, if you can find it, has skyrocketed, and in many cases, it is no longer available. And to provide these kind of services, a home like this, where you have the quality of life, boy, that's gonna cost, and our healthcare is already extremely high. I think the United States is the highest healthcare cost. But just this week, long-term healthcare, really, really more expensive, and if you can find it. And so um, we might not have options like this when we're frail, and I don't know what the answer is either. It's just so scary. This book is really doing a good job about having us consider um, these issues.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Dara, go ahead. Good to see you.
Hi there. I'm repairing my refrigerator tonight, so I've got the computer running next to me while I'm working. But I can't remember the name of who was speaking just before Edie there about how she wasn't sure if Maslow's hierarchy applies so much later in life. I think Gawande makes that point himself on page 93 towards the bottom. This is what's more, our driving motivations in life, instead of remaining constant, change hugely over time and in ways that don't quite fit Maslow's classic hierarchy. So he even acknowledges that the way we, relate to that hierarchy will change as we get older. And he makes the point later, I think it's not till page 127, that some psychologists say that there should be a sixth level beyond it for sometimes referred to as transcendence.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Dara. KP, go ahead. You there, KP? Okay. Go ahead and I don't know. Go ahead. Once you figure it out, let me know. Um, so one of the things I was thinking about with this is I'm really fascinated by how we define things. I was in a class today where it's critical approaches to literature, and it's one of those classes where you get super heady about reading books, and it's kind of funny how heady you can get when it comes to literature and how people really get in and sometimes make things bigger or more complicated than they need to be. It's a fun class though. And today we were talking about sort of how literary critics define definitions and how words can mean many, many things to many people based off of experience, culture, and so many other variables. And so I was thinking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs and what it means to be safe, right? What it means to be safe, even at that core definition, means something different to Deanna than it does to Barney, than it does to Kimberly, and so on. So, but the problem is that when we institutionalize it and we make it the same definition for everybody, that's another problem, right? Well, Kimberly, safety now means this for you. It's just what that's going to mean. You're going to go to bed at this time. You're going to have these meds. You're going to do this. Kathy's going to get the exact same treatment. So is Cindy, because that is how I can do this efficiently since I'm the administrator. Yeah, it's just an interesting thought. How we define stuff also matters. What does it mean to be safe? Gail, go ahead.
Well, we have become such a litigative society that I think that what safe means is what the insurers of the corporation that owns the nursing home means safe is.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
for
I
sure.
think that most nursing homes don't dare implement some of these more innovative practices.
Yeah, safety means safety for the home, right? The nursing home, not the patient. Safety to our bottom line so that we stay profitable. Safety to our legal system. Safety to our staff. We don't have to be overworked and stressed. All those things. Yeah, has nothing to do with the safety of the patient. I mean, it does, but not nearly as much, right? We have to deal with the bigger concern, apparently. Well, let's go to 97. I liked this passage. This talks about perceived time. This is um, has a little bit of a philosophical twist, which I loved. Right in the middle of 97, it says 15 years later, when she was a scholar, the experience led her to formulate a hypothesis. How we seek to spend our time may depend on how much time we perceive ourselves to have. When you are young and healthy, you believe you will live forever. You do not worry about losing any of your capabilities. People tell you the world is your oyster, the sky is the limit, and so on. And you are willing to delay gratification, to invest years, for example, in gaining skills and resources for a brighter future. You seek to plug into bigger streams of knowledge and information. You widen your networks of friends and connections instead of hanging out with your mother. When horizons are measured in decades, which might as well be infinity to human beings, you most desire all that stuff at the top of Maslow's pyramid: achievement, creativity, and other attributes of self-actualization. But as your horizon contracts, when you see the future ahead of you as finite and uncertain, your focus shifts to the here and now, to everyday pleasures and the people closest to you. The later argument here is that this has nothing to do with your age. It has nothing to do with getting older in connection to your narrowing your focus. It's often thought that by being when we're younger, we're willing to drive harder and invest in the future and so, but that can happen at any age, right? And young people can narrow and spend time with mom. Has everything to do with the amount of time you perceive you have left, and that was an important concept in the book. Um, They played with a few different studies. One of the favorites was that they did a study in China of a group of people who they would show them cards of people from celebrities to family members and ask who would you prefer to spend the next 30 minutes with? Sort them in order of importance for that meeting. The people who perceived they had lots of time, of course, spent put at the front of that stack people that they could benefit from the most. People with knowledge, celebrities, and then mom kind of ended up at the back of the stack or closer to the back. People who perceived they had less time, mom was at the top of the stack, right? Um, but what was fascinating is that they did the study in China, and then immediately thereafter, a structural change happened in the government of China where they began to control more of the citizens' lives. So they went back and did the study again, and the data sort of flipped, and people became far more interested in spending time with mom because they felt less in control of their lives. They felt they had less time. So, what are your thoughts about this, about perceived time and its importance in how you spend it? Any thoughts here? There's a book. I'm looking for a book. Go ahead, Cindy. I'm gonna grab a book while you talk.
Yeah, I was just thinking of that concept of memento mori.
Yeah.
Remember your death
Remember
or
that.
whatever, because it kind of not, I guess, artificially places that time constraint right in front of you, hopefully causing you to um, live your best life, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. Memento mori is a fascinating idea. It's sort of a strategy that Stoic philosophers went through in order to remind themselves daily that they were going to die. And so they would set icons around their home. For example, there were three of them. There was a lily, uh, a, a timer, like a sand timer sort of thing to remind them that time was running out, and a skull. They would put these things around their house because the lilies would wilt and all sorts of stuff. They were just constantly reminding themselves that you are dying, you are going to die. Some of them even went as far as reenacting their funerals every day. They would have their servants carry them out in coffins and set them in the yard and so on. Some of them would go to funerals just to be at funerals and to spend time with the dead, just to be reminded of that. Derek, go ahead.
Yeah, I think one of the other examples struck me more here because, like, yeah, he makes the example of Hong Kong being handed back to China from Britain and SARS and a couple other things where there's like a general societal upheaval, so you can understand how perspectives would change. But I thought it was even more striking when they did the survey with the HIV patients, because now you've taken it more to an individual level than the societal level, where this individual all of a sudden has gone from maybe having a potential lifespan of decades to maybe only having a lifespan of a few years, and they shift in perspective equal to what you would expect of an elderly person. And then they did the flip of that too with some elderly people and said, well, imagine if there was suddenly some cure that could extend your life by 20 years, and all of
Yeah.
a sudden they started thinking more like young people. So it's an interesting shift in perspective, that it's not so much your age in a finite context, it's how much life you think you have left.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for bringing in those details. One of my favorite books is this book. It's called 4,000 Weeks, Time Management for Mortals. It's very good. It's a self-help book. It's a time management book. And I read it as such, but I got 5 pages in and I thought to myself, this is not a time management book. This is so much better than that. The title itself gives it away, 4,000 weeks. This is the average amount of weeks that you'll live as a human being. It's just 4,000 weeks, which sounds like a lot, but they go by really fast, don't they? It's always Sunday or whatever it might be. And when they start clicking by and you're realizing, oh my gosh, I'm going to get 4,000 really quickly here, it changes every decision you make, every thought you have, and it immediately puts you in that perspective of perceived time horizon. It's a great book because he doesn't talk about how to fill your calendar up with meetings and how to be more efficient. He talks about how to make the decisions that will make those 4,000 weeks as valuable as possible, right? It's a nice book. So if you're interested in um, time management from the perspective of what we're talking about, I highly recommend Oliver Berkman. He's a great writer too. He references a lot of philosophy in here too, but does it in a very easy way. It's just a great book. It's a beautiful book. Raphael, go ahead.
Does my mic work?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. So when Derek mentioned last time the book Behave, I
Mhm.
went back to that. Uh, I'd only read snippets, and now I'm determined to read all of it. And the emphasis between the difference between individualistic and collectivist society. Like by age 15, I'd grown up in four different societies, spoke four different languages. And the first of which was, at that time, it's changed, very, very collectivist. And it made me think that in an individualistic culture, we carry life's burdens alone. In a collective society, that burden is shared by everyone. And that makes an enormous difference in that support that we get. It lessens our anxiety, our worry, our fear, and even I, the fear of death. I think we're more willing, for example, to die for a cause than anything else. So thank
Yeah.
you, Derek.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up, Rafael. Great connection. There's a big change in perspective between the two communities. Um, I personally think there are pros and cons to both. The individualistic society, definitely some pros, definitely some cons. Same with the collectivist society. Okay, let's talk about Ivan Ilyich. Ready, John? Let's go. All right. Page 99. Ivan Ilyich is a small novella written by Leo Tolstoy. The short summary, if you haven't read it, I won't ruin it for you, but it's about a gentleman who's doing quite well in life. He sees his value in life through, he's not very good at it. And he really just puts his time and effort into doing good at his work as a magistrate for his small city that he's in. And he sort of values his life based on how well it looks as though he's living. So he puts a lot of energy and effort into decorating his home. And one day he sort of is trying to decorate his window with some curtains and he falls and bumps his side and he gets hurt. And that leads to complications, which ultimately put him at his deathbed. That's not the story. The story is what happens as he's in his deathbed, which I won't ruin. Okay. But it is the story of a man dying and how he deals with it perceptively versus how everybody else deals with it perceptively. And it's fascinating because Tolstoy had a really strong understanding of what it feels like to be alone in the process of your own grieving. Something that everybody else around him just could not understand for whatever reason. This passage points that out. It's on page 99. Tolstoy recognized this as Ivan Ilyich's health fades and he realizes that his time is limited. His ambition and vanity disappear. He simply wants comfort and companionship, but almost no one understands, not his family, his friends, or the stream of eminent physicians whom his wife pays to examine him. Tolstoy saw the chasm of perspective between those who have to contend with life's fragility and those who don't. He grasped the particular anguish of having to bear such knowledge alone. But he saw something else as well. Even when a sense of mortality reorders our desires, these desires are not impossible to satisfy. Although none of Ivan Ilyitch's family or friends or doctors grasp his needs, his servant Gerazim does. Gerazim is a beautiful character in the story. I encourage you to go read it. Um, he's this gentleman who just spends time with Ivan Ilyich and does so in a way that is not subservient, although it is. He does all sorts of physical things to help Ivan out. The most difficult to understand is that Ivan feels pain constantly in his body, and the only way he can get relief from that pain is to have his legs held up in the air, right? Like you gotta have his legs up in the air. And the only way for that to happen is for him to rest his legs on Gerazim's shoulders. And so Gerazim does. He just sits there with this guy's legs on his shoulders all night long, for hours on end, night after night. Um, and it's, of course, a fictional story. But the idea is that Gerazim knows that one day he'll be the guy in bed in pain. And he's hoping that somebody will hold my legs when I'm in pain. And there's really no more value that I could give in this life than to potentially ease the suffering of another person. But the point of that passage is to point out that what Yvonne is very different than everybody else. Everybody else is trying to solve it. They're trying to get medicine. They're trying to tell him to just eat your meals and start walking and exercise and do what you got to do. Meanwhile, he's suffering alone in his anguish.
I lost a bit of what you said. I think you broke up a little bit.
Did I? Okay.
Yeah. I don't
All
know
right.
if
Yeah,
you
that's
can
possible.
repeat your last thought. I'd love to hear it.
Sure, yeah. Just that the whole book is about the perception of death, the person going through it versus everybody else watching it, right? And it's trying to close that gap. So with that, let's open it up to you all. What do you think about this passage? John, go ahead.
I wish that the group was doing that book. I know that we did it as a close reading, but I kind of wish that everyone would be in on this because it's a book that you can read again and again and again and again and again and again. And it's such a short work, but it speaks to what we're talking about with this book because nobody listens to him. Nobody really cares, really. Except for, as you said, Gerasim, but nobody listens to him. So in these nursing homes, the staff, and by the way, I'm not even judging. The staff is underpaid, overworked. They've got laws and rules and protocol, and it's easy for us to sit here maybe and criticize, but there are limitations, and as a lot of these people age, they're high maintenance. And so I think it's great that Gawande frames this whole book around the Tolstoy book, and an example of applying the ideas in the works that we read, um, and also they're trying to heal him, and he's not healable. They want to fix him. He's not fixable. And just like these people that are aging and are frail and in pain and aching. I mean, there's just so much that they can do. And the only comfort, as you said, that he ever got was putting his feet up on this guy's shoulders. But in these nursing homes, I mean, there's just so much they can do.
Yeah.
And in the case of the Tolstoy story, he just wants people to know he's dying. And nobody
Yeah.
wants to hear about his little story about that he's dying. I mean, so I think that people really just want to be listened to. A lot of these stories that Gawande covers do involve people that just want to be heard.
Yeah.
They don't necessarily want to live forever. They just want to be heard and comforted, not healed or fixed or some other unrealistic thing. So anyway, I just want to get my 2 cents in there and give a shout out to Tolstoy and Dr. Gawande and Dr. Gawande's tender, sympathetic understanding of his subject and the stories that he tells. It's just so beautiful.
Yeah, very good. Thank you, John. Raphael, go ahead.
Yeah, Eddie, your comment that there are advantages and disadvantages between individualists, collectivists, and what John just said made me ask myself, do people in collective society listen more? My first answer would be no.
Mm.
So whatever advantages the collective has, I'm not sure. They're assuming we're all on the same page. And so maybe we don't have to listen because, hey, we already agree. What's the point?
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
weird thing about it is if you want to get the most argumentative people are in a collectivist society as opposed to an individualistic one. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely can't speak to that because I've only ever lived here, but you've been all around, so definitely. Cindy, go ahead.
One thing I see in a bunch of different places is denial. So
Mm.
the author brings it up kind of in the beginning, I think, or maybe it was a comment in a book club, I don't recall, but that like the medical community just kind of is in denial and not able to talk to people like this surgery is not going to improve your quality of life. Like they can't say that because they don't know how, so they're kind of in a denial. And then, I mean, even Ivan Illich was in denial about his death for a good part of the time he was dying. And so people who are are aging and dying, some of them don't have the self-reflection to even realize it, and they're in denial, which can cause its own set of problems. So I don't know what the point of my comment is, other than encouraging self-reflection and honesty in that reflection, because denial isn't helping anyone.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, thank you. Nicole, go ahead.
I just wanted, before I forgot about it, to mention I appreciate his discussion also of kind of he's a physician, he's a medical physician, a medical doctor, right? Just kind of the medicalization of the dying process, how we've taken something that is a very human inevitability for all of us and kind of handed over the responsibility, made the elevated the medical people to the real decision makers and the real, oracles of what's going on. And, you can see, we can all see the fallout of that. And that, yeah, it just kind of puts a fine point on how that's not really probably the way to go. And,
Oh, we lost you there, but yeah, we lost you at the last bit there, but I think we got most of it. Thank you for sharing.
yeah.
Evelyn, go ahead.
Yeah, there are so many great points being made. In my first career, I was a nurse for 30 years and had a lot of experience working with people who were elderly and losing processing and dementia and Alzheimer's, and just not having any caregivers left to take care of them. And it's so complex. I love the points he's bringing up in the book, but the whole ending up in an assisted living facility can be for so many reasons and different reasons, and it's so complex. And it's I'll offer the idea that my kids have already started to treat me with a little ageism. So, mom, you can't do that. It's not safe, Don't risk that, mom. And so, I scuba dive, and they're like, what, mom, I'm not sure if should go on that dive. Are there going to be sharks there? This kind of thing. And they're very protective of me, but there is a boundary I push back on and say, look, I want to live. I can't be afraid. But there's also, that's a small part of it because I'm very active and able. But I think as we get older, we're going to feel that pressure from culture to do less and not be as active, and possibly not be challenged as much. And I think that can end us up in a situation where we need caretakers earlier than we do actually need, because it's interesting how in all these different types of assisted living facilities they're creating, it's the idea that if you give them a reason and an enjoyment, they come back to life almost. They see a reason and they start to feel better emotionally and want to live. So it's really complex. There's an emotional change happening. There's physical disabilities happening. And then we're living longer and we're losing our minds and we're physically okay. So it's so complicated. It's really complicated. So
It is. Well, if you all continue to be a part of this book club, you'll stave off all sorts of dementia and Alzheimer's. So that part's taken care of. Now you just got to go to the gym, and you're never going to have problems. So congratulations. Yeah. Derek, go ahead.
So a thought occurred to me while I was listening to what Nicole was saying. So I'm going to play a little bit of devil's advocate. Not that I'm criticizing Nicole, because I know she was mostly talking about what Dr. Gawande was saying in the book. It only occurred to me while she was saying it. So talking about how death has become medicalized. It used to be this natural thing that happened in the home, and now we let the medical system take over, and it tends to happen in the hospitals. Well, I just thought of the contrast to that. Birth also used to be something that occurred in the home as a natural process. And the mortality rates, both for the children and for the mothers, were horrifying. So I think we're all really thankful that medicine has gotten us to a point where we don't have those child mortality rates and the mortality rates for the mothers. But that's because we have this expectation of life. Whereas with elder care, you kind of have a different mindset. It's like, well, they're going to die eventually. It's just a question of when and how. So we kind of have I think to a large extent, the medical community is extending people's lives. It's just, are we improving the quality of life in the process?
Yeah, and to add on to that too, not only that, but we are also in a position where um, we have the free time and the resources to talk about this, right? Like just the fact that we can sit around and go, gee, how should we make elders' lives better? Like that's a privilege in and of itself that we've come this far as a society to have the resources and the time and the people and the care and the ability to care. If we were all having to work in factories until 9 o'clock at night just to get food on the table, there wouldn't be any time for these discussions. So that's progress at least. Yeah. But we have a real problem. Even though there is progress, there is a resource constraint. So let's go to 105. These ideas, as we've been trying to put them in play, have succeeded in some areas and not succeeded in others. And Karen Wilson, the lady who started the idea of assisted living, it ended up not going so well eventually for her plan. Halfway through 105, it says, I asked Wilson why assisted living so often fell short. She saw several reasons. First, to genuinely help people with living, it's harder to do than to talk about. And it's difficult to make caregivers think about what it really entails. She gave the example of helping a person dress. Ideally, you let people do what they can themselves, thus maintaining their capabilities and a sense of independence. But, she said, dressing somebody is easier than letting them dress themselves. It takes less time, it's less aggravation. So, unless supporting people's capabilities is made priority, the staff ends up dressing people like they're rag dolls. Gradually, that's how everything begins to go. The task comes to matter more than the people. Um, so part of me wants to sympathize with that statement. Like, I get it, right? I'm a parent, I've got kids in my home, and there are days where I just do it. Like I just because I'm tired and the resources are low and you got to make dinner and the house is a mess, and so you just like fix the thing and do it. Versus thinking, what's best for my child here? What's the teaching moment? What would make them the best adult possible? What would nourish their soul? So I'm not advocating for it. I just am sympathetic to the problem of providing real care. Any thoughts here? If you go back to Ivan Ilyich while you're thinking, I mean, the idea is beautiful. He has Ivan's legs draped over him, Gerazim. Like, in practice, that's beautiful. Well, in thought, that's beautiful, but in practice, that's quite hard to do. And to provide that level of care to each individual person who's aging. Like, how do you do that in a way that actually works? Raphael, go ahead. You are on mute, sir. Go ahead and unmute
Yeah,
yourself.
yeah. Okay. Just because we get older does not mean that we uh, abrogate the responsibility for all our gifts and the things that we're able to do. And I don't know if it was Nicole or somebody said how kids treat. Yeah, my kids treat me less seriously now that I'm older. Oh, Dad, because I'm going to turn 80 in 4 months, and I'm going to go biking and do all kinds of crazy stuff. That's just how it is. It's but there's a wonderful podcast by the BBC, the Happy Pod. I don't know how many of you. So it's only good news. It comes on Saturday, and one example was in an older care facility. Elders were paired up with high school students, and they wound up mentoring them. And oh, what a difference did that make! And as soon as that thought crossed my mind, I just put on my to-do list at the top, call local high school and volunteer to teach photography. Period. I mean, the more the more I help others, forget about age. I'm still as good at that as I ever was. I'm sure these are very talented people we have in this group. And there's so many people could benefit from being mentored by us right up to our deathbed, as far as I'm concerned. So
Yeah.
anyway, that's the action I intend to take as a result of being here. You're making me a lot of trouble, Eddie, but that's okay.
That's what I do. What I
Yeah,
do.
me too.
Go out and take action, people. It's good. Yeah. All right. Well, I'm going to skip a few notes. We've only got a few minutes left for the evening before some have to go because I know it's late on the East Coast. So let's skip to note page 123. A reason to live reduces death. I think this is important. Talks about this gentleman who was pretty much living off the grid, this sort of fascinating doctor who, wears overalls to work and just wants to change the world. And then he ends up leaving the traditional medical care system and goes into assisted living and is shocked by what he sees, works at Chase Memorial and decides to try an experiment, which is to bring life to the institution and feels the best way to do that is to give responsibility for life, right? Giving people purpose. And to do that, we're gonna bring in many dogs, many cats, and over 100 birds. I loved this example. I thought it was madness. Um, all right, so page 123 starts with researchers study the effects. Researchers studied the effects of this program over 2 years, comparing a variety of measures for Chase's residents with those of residents at another nursing home nearby. Their study found that the number of prescriptions required per resident fell to half that of the control nursing home. Psychotropic drugs for agitation, like Haldol, decreased in particular. The total drug cost fell to just 38% of the comparison facility. Death fell 15%. The study couldn't say why, but Thomas thought he could. I believe that the difference in death rates can be traced to the fundamental human need for a reason to live. Um, so the story itself is beautiful, right? This is another story of somebody who wants to just bring some sort of, wants to change the way things are done, change the norm. Um, I love the fact that Thomas and his crew are building the airplane as it's flying. Like they bought all 100 parakeets and had no idea what to do with them, so they released them in I think the kitchen or something. Birds are flying everywhere. They have no cages. They're making it up as they go, and I think that's real change. I think people who are changing the world don't have the answer to everything. It's not all planned out, but they're willing to try. They're willing to fail. He was one of them. I loved this story because I see it in my own personal life. I've got my mother who's aging, and I've got her sister who is probably 15 years older than her. And the thing that keeps them alive are their darn puppies. They always get a new puppy. When one passes, they get another one. And that dog is everything. That dog keeps them going. And I love those dogs because it just brings my mother life. It's fantastic. Any thoughts about this? Now, purpose to live doesn't have to be to care for a dog. I'll kind of leave this thought with you, and then we'll go to John here. It can be to take a course at a college. It can be to teach painting at your local community. It can be to mentor somebody, like Raphael was saying, right? In whatever art form it might be. John, go ahead.
I don't even know what I'm going to say. Somebody said that earlier, and I wanted to encourage newbies to not be afraid to share because we're just waiting to hear what you have to say. I don't know what I'm going to say half the time when I put my hand up. I have a feeling for it, but and I just wanted to mention that my first impression in this part of the book was this guy is totally nuts.
Yeah.
Like the staff doesn't have enough to do, but they got to clean up the bird cages. Well, then I guess after a while I realized, well, really the clients or the residents are supposed to become involved in taking care of something and their pets and things. And the more I thought about it and the more I read about it, the more I admired the daring project that this this guy, like you said, the birds are flying around. They don't have the cages and they've got dogs and cats and and the residents are all excited and happy. In fact,
For sure.
Eddie, it's not that different from you, like I like accounting, but why don't I sell books and have book groups and
Yeah.
do book
Yeah.
stuff and and I'm thinking, what is this young guy nuts? I mean, you're doing what your passion is and it's unwieldy. It's like herding cats probably half the time, but you just move forward. So anyway, I
We're,
just thought it was
we're
total.
building the airplane as we're flying over here. We're building it as we're flying.
Yeah. But anyway, I did. My first impression was this guy was just totally over the top, and he was. But why not? Because nothing else is working. So give it a try anyway. I liked it, and I love that he did it.
Yeah, thank you for that, John. I agree. When I read that story, I thought this guy was nuts too. Like, how do you bring 100 birds into a place? But I will tell you this, my grandmother was in a facility like this for the last year of her life. She did not want to go, but she went for several reasons health-wise. She just had to be there. Um, they had birds. There were birds in this place. And that's all she ever talked about were those darn birds. You'd go and you'd visit, and she'd make you walk out to the hallways because there were trees in the hallways, right? And the birds were all up in the trees. They were just flying all over the place. There were no cages. There were just birds flying all over the place. And she loved the birds. And so like that gave her a reason to be, and that kept her going to the activities. And but yeah, she would call me and just tell me about the birds. It's funny. Kathy, go ahead.
Yeah, I actually love the story. I think they refer to it as the Big Bang
Hmm.
story
Hmm.
because, they said, why don't we just bring in a dog and see how that goes? And he said, nope, nope, we're just going to bring it all in at one time.
Yep.
And this the culture change is hard. Mostly on the staff, though. They're the ones that probably would push back the hardest.
Yeah.
But I love the story. And, when my mother-in-law was in a assisted living facility, we tried to do stuff like that too. But instead of bringing the bird inside, we would put like a bird feeder right outside her window so she could see the birds come and she could
Mhm.
see, through her window. But it's not the same as listening to birds or, petting a dog. So I just love the story.
I did too.
It's crazy, but I loved it.
Yeah, very good. I would love to be this Thomas guy's friend, just hang out with him. Be great. KP, go ahead. Still don't have the mic. Okay. Well, oh, there you are.
Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So I just thought this guy was great. His whole life story, he's such a character.
Mhm.
I don't know if I want to live with him, but I just thought he was great. And the way if I have to go to someplace, I would love to go this place as long as it also had a really good
Mhm.
library because you could feel the life. You could feel how the whole place just come alive and people. I think this would make a really good movie. I could just see it. It was
Yeah.
cinematic,
Yeah.
and funny and
Yeah.
cool. And
Yep.
I think it's a really good idea, but I don't know if anybody else could feel it.
Yeah. Nice. We call the movie 100 Birds. That'd be a great title. Raphael, go ahead.
My lizard just wants to go on the record. It's not just about dogs and cats. That's
Oh,
it.
there you go. There you go. Yeah.
He
There's
was
many
very
ways.
offended.
Yeah, there you go. Well, I know we're at time for a lot of people. So if you have to go, give us a wave. We're going to be meeting next Tuesday, as always. We'll be reading from page 140 to 220 to 210. Is that where we're at? Let me look at the calendar here that Carol made for us. 210, page 210. So we're just doing 10 pages a day. So we've got two more discussions about this book. So if you have to go, give us a wave. I hope you're enjoying it. I will, I'd like to have a little sort of conversation here, though, about how to apply the thoughts behind this book. So I can't remember who it was, but at the beginning of our conversations tonight, someone said this book is, I think it was Cindy's, this book makes me want to do something in the industry, to change something, right? I've been feeling the same. Like I don't even know what I would do or how I would do it. But our motto is to read slowly, take notes, and apply the ideas. So I'm going to encourage everybody this week to take that motto seriously and to really think about an action you can take to make something in this space better, either for your future self as you go through this process, which you will, shocker, or for your kids who are going to go through it with you. That was advice from a member last week about how he was going through some experiences with his parents and gave us some advice there. Or maybe there's something you can do at your local center or visiting somebody who's going through this at this point in time. But see if you can come up with an actual action. Um, Oftentimes we read books like this and we think, wow, that was great. That was full of good stories, very inspiring. We finish it and then we go on to the next book, right? And it doesn't change anything. Nothing changes. We just read a cool book. I think we have a real opportunity to actually make a small difference here. Or so we might have a few Thomases or Wilsons in the room, and somebody might actually make a huge difference here. Maybe somebody will really get inspired. So um, we've got one more note I want to share before we go. If anybody wants to hang out, feel free to do so. I want to go page 6. There is a reference to a philosopher, Josiah Royce. Let's see here. He's got some great writings, by the way. I'm not super uh, familiar with his work. Um, but he kind of lives around the time of like William James and all these guys who are writing about pragmatism and that kind of thing. And he's referenced here as having written a work called The Philosophy of Loyalty, which I thought was really cool. On 126, though, let me see here. Actually, let's go to 125, the page right before. Yeah. In 1908, a Harvard philosopher named Josiah Royce wrote a book with the title The Philosophy of Loyalty. Royce was not concerned with the trials of aging, but he was concerned with a puzzle that is fundamental to anyone contemplating his or her mortality. Royce wanted to understand why simply existing, why being merely housed and fed and safe and alive seems empty and meaningless to us. It's a great question to ask. What more is it that we need in order to feel that life is worthwhile? The answer he believed is that we all seek a cause beyond ourselves. This was to him an intrinsic human need. The cause could be large, family, country, principle, or small, a building project, the care of a pet. The important thing was that in ascribing value to the cause and seeing it as worth making sacrifices for, we give our lives meaning. Meaning is an interesting thing, right? It's another word that I would love I think we could spend hours on just defining meaning. I think Edie would have a different way to define the meaning of her life versus Barney and so on. But I think that's another thing that is a nice action for us to take this week. Like, how do I define great meaning for my life? I was once in a room where the speaker asked 1,000 business owners, like, how do you know when you're finally happy, when you have enough? Because all of these people were like trying to make more money and grow and all that other randomness, right? Like, how do you know when you've achieved your goals? And everybody had a different answer for what happiness meant to them. I don't remember much from that conference other than that moment where I was like, geez, I don't know. What is happiness to me? Um, if I don't take the time to define what happiness is to me, then it seems to get ascribed to me. Other people's versions of happiness end up somehow becoming my own. Well, I guess I have to make this much money, or I have to be in this kind of house, or I have to live over in this part of the country, or I guess that's what happiness is. So I would encourage everybody that, as well, if you haven't yet done this for yourself, to try and figure out what happiness means to you, what the meaning of life means to you, and see if you can get it on paper, get it out of your head onto paper. That's a nice journal prompt. Happiness to me is dot dot dot, right? And try to be somewhat specific. For example, you might say something like, happiness to me is more time with people I love. That's great, but that's pretty broad. Who are the people? What does it mean to spend time with them? How long? You know, why is that important to you? Why are those people in specific important to you versus other people? What do you want to come from those people, right? Like, happiness is this like super slippery thing unless we get really descriptive of it. And I think this kind of work is actually quite hard to do. It's really challenging. It's the kind of work that you think, I'll do that later. I'm gonna go cook dinner. I'll put my happiness off until tomorrow, because we don't want to really sit down and think about this stuff. But anyway, I'm going to be doing that this week, trying to figure out what. The last thing I'll say, the answer changes too. At least it does for me over time, right? And so I continually need to ask myself, like, what is real joy? What is real happiness? That kind of thing. So I'm a growing, changing, evolving entity. Any thoughts about that before we wrap up? You guys all doing good? Everybody have a good time tonight? Good. All right. Um, I don't know how much this can possibly mean in a Zoom meeting full of lots of people, but I genuinely love all of you. I'm grateful for all of you. It is nice to be around people who take time to do things that are important to them. And so being a part of a book club, whether it's ours or a book club in your local community, really makes a difference. Wow, that was a lot of hearts all over the place. Did y'all see that? That was crazy. It's not even February yet. Um, but I do genuinely love you, and I'm grateful that you spend time with me. I hope you're getting as much out of this as I am. So, thank you for being here. I'll see you next Tuesday. Enjoy the book and leave some comments in the community if you have your thoughts. See you all.